So today I'm just going to be presenting the second half of the WHO document for pre-qualification for APIs and FPPs, which is what I talked about last week. Um, so to begin, the World Health Organization, once you submit an application, will send an invitation to express interest. So the World Health Organization publishes invitations to manufacturers of specific APIs. They are identified from the submitted API dossiers that I talked about last week, and they are all in accordance with procedures and guidelines that they had previously listed. Um, APIs listed in an invitation for the EOIs, which are the expression of interest, will generally be considered by the World Health Organization to be vital for effective treatment and prevention for specified diseases. So examples of these that have happened in the past would be like HIV and AIDS, malaria, or tuberculosis. And the second thing that they would be listed as would be identified as being of highest concern in relation to quality, which is something that they're really interested in when it comes to what they're going to pre-qualify. Each invitation is open and transparent. They're going to kind of really tell you exactly what they're looking for in your API, and it will normally be published in the World Health Organization's website and through media such as press. So even if you don't make it past the pre-qualification process, the world's going to know that you at least got invited to do this expression to the World Health Organization, or at least express interest in your API or FPP, which I think in and of itself is really important because at least it lets them know that you have like made a good enough product that the World Health Organization is very interested in it due to it being vital and being reaching their standard of quality. So they're going to ask for a lot of data and information to be submitted, of course, because it's a pre-qualification process. So the interested manufacturers are the ones that are going to be submitting documentation for these APIs, and they're going to be required, like it's going to just be required information. So there's of course like general information, which is like nomenclature, what it's named, the structure, general properties of the API. There's manufacturer, because manufacturing is probably the most critical part. It is the manufacturers that are going to be submitting the dossier. The manufacturers are going to be the ones that are going to be studied further. They're going to be checked for quality. So manufacturer probably has the longest list, and I wasn't able to fill all the bullets, but I thought that some of these were very important. Site of manufacture, control of materials, process of validation and or evaluation, elucidation of structure, specific specifications and analytical procedures. Just because while they are going to be looking at a lot more things, I felt like these are just the important ones that are like that really point out why manufacturing is so important, because they're looking at so many critical things. They will be looking at reference standards and materials, container closure system, and they're also going to be looking at stability, even though I didn't add it on this slide, just to let you know, the stability of your summary, conclusion, and, post-approval stability of the API. These above listed API dossier that you would be submitting is the same as like a common technical document. So it's a CTD for the API, which is something that you could also submit for like other organizations. This is just a little more in depth for the World Health Organization. So there's a screening of each dossier submitted. So every API dossier is going to be screened for completion or completedness before it's going to be evaluated by the World Health Organizations. So anyone that does not meet these like relevant qualifications to even be further invited into the evaluations would just like stay at the first step. Like you would have been invited, but because you didn't fill out the pre-qualifications, then you're just not going to be able to move forward from that. There is an assessment. So that is the screening. After the screening, there's an assessment of API dossiers. So this is information on the APIs that have been submitted in the dossier, and those are going to be evaluated by a team of experts. These are appointed and pre-qualified by the World Health Organization, and they have experience in fields of pharmacy, organic, or analytical chemistry. And these assessors will be appointed by a standard operating procedure established by the World Health Organization as an SOP, and they would form different committees in order to then go ahead and be able to either um, well, they're going to assess the dossier and either approve it or not approve it. So something that is very important with the pre-qualification process is a site inspection, because like I mentioned before, the manufacturer is the one who's going to be submitting this documentation, and the manufacturer is going to be the one that gets the most scrutinized. You could submit a dossier and be like probably one of the best pharmaceutical companies in the world, and if your manufacturer is just not up to the standards of the World Health Organization, you're not going to get approved. So site inspection is something that's really critical and important. It's dependent on taking into account different types of APIs and results or reports or inspections conducted by regulatory authorities. This means that you could have like other regulatory authorities that have like inspected your site, and if they have said that it's not up to standard, even if WHO says, oh, we actually think it's okay, that's going to go into the decision, because clearly other people haven't researched or evaluated the manufacturer you're currently working with, and they have decided that they're not up to code. These inspections are teams of experts appointed by the World Health Organization with relevant qualifications. So, like I mentioned before, they're usually in the pharmaceutical business, in analytical or organic chem, or they're just in analytics. Um, the WHO staff member is the one that's going to coordinate a team, and they're usually going to be accompanied by an NMRA in. So that's going to be a representative that's actually going to be the one guiding the World Health Organization's team through the manufacturer. If there's any language gaps or anything like that, they're going to be the one to assist, and they're also going to be the ones that are going to know a lot about it. So they're going to be able to explain to the team kind of what's going on. It's important that this representative is from the country of the manufacturing plant, because even if the organization is from, let's say, the United States, of manufacturing plants aren't always necessarily in the country of where the organization is from, and you want someone who lives there, who's been in that manufacturing plant, kind of like on site every day, instead of someone who lives in another country who's just kind of there to show you around. So there is a product timeline, and this timeline is a little more simplified than the one in the document, but basically the first step is that you need an expression of interest, application to participate in the World Health Organization pre-qualification program. The second step is they're going to receive and process this expression of interest, and they're going to like with accompanying documentation by this program. Then part 3 kind of splits off into 2 parts. So the first part is the assessment of the dossier. So that's going to be your submission. This is 2 parallel things. There's quality and clinical. So they're going to be looking at the quality of your product and how it has proven itself in clinical settings. And then the second part of part 3 is inspection. So this is just 3 different tracks that are like, what are the manufacturing site of FPPs, the manufacturing sites for APIs, and clinical research sites, because quality and the clinical aspect, like I said in part 3A, is something that's really important in this process. Part 4 is the final decision on pre-qualifications. So if the product dossier and the inspection of manufacturing are found to be acceptable, then you will be looking to see what the final decision would be. Step 5 would be the listing of pre-qualified products and the manufacturing sites on the website, because these are kind of linked, like your product is hands in hands with the manufacturing site. Part 6, which is not listed here, is just like a maintenance list of pre-qualified products, which is just, making sure that every organization that gets put on this list has kind of a system for how to sample and test variations, and whenever there's a complaint, to just retest products. So the World Health Organization recognizes that the scientific evaluations of FPPs by SRAs, which applies similarly to stringent standards for quality, safety, and efficiency to those recommended by WHO. So basically what this means is that if you have been pre-approved by an SRA, which has similar standards, quality standards to the World Health Organization, that means that an applicant that shares with the World Health Organization that you have already been approved by stringent SRA, standards, and like they can vouch for you and they can send the reference to the World Health Organization, um, who will consider an FPP for an inclusion of pre-qualified products, maybe even without some of the more stringent guidelines, because you've already been pre-qualified by an SRA, which is something that would be really good, especially if you like already trying to get into like an FDA approved. So they would be considered like a stringent standard of quality under an SRA. So it would help um, it be then qualified by the World Health Organization, because the FDA is only in America. Then like the World Health Organization would be like a much bigger part, but they will take into account that an FDA has already pre-approved this product. So documentation needed for submission, there's a couple of things. So you're going to need a cover letter, and this cover letter is just going to indicate, a statement of information submitted, making sure that, the organization knows that this is true, that it's correct. It submits that the World Health Organization pre-qualifications for the FPP, and it has like composition, the strength of manufacturing specifications. So all of this is just like in the cover letter. The second part that's going to be important is marketing authorization or an equivalent that is issued by an SRA. And this is just to make sure that it is in accordance to requirements. Number three would be a current copy of a World Health Organization type certificate of pharmaceutical product. And this has to be fully completed and include answers to every question that they will list in like their guidelines for an API or FPP. Number four would be an SRA approved product information. So this is a summary of product characteristics or an equivalent. That's just, it doesn't even have to be in the document. It could just be a web link to where the SRA has approved and labeled everything that's on this API or FPP. The fifth would be an SRI approved manufacturers. This is all, if like an SRA has approved your product, they're also going to approve your manufacturer. They're in the same hand as who. So who's going to need that to come with documentation? Number six would be a list of SRA approved it would be just a more in-depth list of SRA approved FPP and APIs. Just to give it more specific, let the World Health Organization know what you're looking at. Number 7 through 9 is just like the public assessment report listing of batches in manufacturing for the market and the sample of products for the market. So this is just a more nitty gritty, like what was the evaluation like under the SRA, and kind of how does that translate to the World Health Organization. And 10 through 11 is the current approved FPP specifications and a quality of information summary, which is what you would get from the SRA. Once you submit it to the World Health Organization, the organization of your dossier is going to fall under 5 modules. So module 1 is the administrative information and prescribing information. So it contains documents specific to World Health Organization and the region in which you are working in. This is the only one that is region specific, but it's very important that this is like labeled for the use in whichever region you're planning to use it in. So like for leishman acid or leprosy would probably be tropical regions, and you're going to have to list those out because that's just something the World Health Organization is looking for. The content of this module is very much specified by the World Health Organization. They're going to be asking for a summary of bioavailability information. They're going to be looking for quality information and things that are just very important to their pre-qualification process. Module 2 is CTD summaries. So it should begin with general introduction to the pharmaceutical, whether it's an API or an FPP. And then it's going to move on to a summary of quality information, and an organization of these summaries is prescribed in their guidelines, so you know exactly what they want, how they're looking for it. I combined modules 3 and 5 here only because I'm going to be looking into a little more in depth of them in the next slide. So module 3 is just, they're looking at quality, information on quality, and they're looking just for that to be in the structure that they ask in their document. And then module 5 is clinical study reports. I think that these are very critically linked, as I talked about in the last slide. They're looking a lot at clinical and quality reports just to make sure that this is up to code for the World Health Organization. Module 4 is and it's about non-clinical study reports. So for modules 3 and 5, this is a little more focus on them. Module 3 focuses on quality. So this is like the drug substance of the APIs. There are 3 options actually that you can use to satisfy the requirements for the APIs under this certificate of suitability of the European pharmaceuticals. So this is the first option. Option 2 is an active pharmaceutical ingredient master file procedure. And then option 3 is the full details of the product. All of these options require a submission of in the CTD format, even though the content may differ. So all of them require all of the modules like previously described to be in the dossier, but this has like an option of which part of module 3 you would like to cover. Module 5 um, has a multi-source of pharmaceutical products because this is where you're going to be telling them like clinical trials, clinical everything, and how that's going to be approved. So you're going to have a clinical study report. There's going to have to be like a whole table of contents for module 5 because you're going to be delving into a lot of different things. There's going to be a listing of all the clinical studies you have done, the clinical study reports, the biopharmaceutical studies, and you're also going to need to have a comparative report to show like how it compares and stacks against different things. Last but not least, there is a format that they are looking for their presentation. I didn't go too much into it because while it's important, I feel like it also kind of follows a lot of critical research papers guidelines, which are like kind of how a lot of papers are submitted, regardless for research. So just a little guidance on the format, though. It has to be transparent, make sure everything is like to allow that if you're going to put it in a binder, which you would be, it has to make sure that none of the hole punches or the binding are interfering with anything, any of the text or any of the tables. Um, any acronym has to be defined the first time it's used, and then therefore after it can be just used like as an acronym. And you have to provide citations throughout, whether it's like from your own research articles or from others. You have to provide citations throughout the thing. The presentation is a binder with the name of the FPP or the API and the company's name, along with the manufacturers. And there are also variations that can be approved for the CTD. However, these have to be approved by the World Health Organization before you think of submitting them. And that is the end.